Welcome, my friends. Thank you for joining me. Let's begin. There comes a moment in every person's life when the noise goes quiet, when the world fades to a whisper and something deeper begins to stir. It's not a thought. It's not an emotion. It's not even a voice in the way you'd expect. It's a summons, a divine pull, a holy ache inside your soul that says, you were made for more. This is not ambition. This is not ego. This is calling, and it comes from God. But here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud. Most people run from it, not because they don't believe on, but because they're terrified of what obedience will cost them. Because God's calling doesn't come with comfort. It comes with a cross. When God calls a man or woman, He doesn't call them to convenience. He calls them to die to themselves, to lay down their plans, their excuses, their comfort zones, and walk straight into the unknown. That's why few answer, not because they're not called, but because the cost feels too high. But what they don't realize is this: the cost of disobedience is always greater than the cost of surrender. Jonah ran and found a storm. Saul compromised and lost the throne. Samson played with the enemy and lost his strength. But when Moses obeyed, slaves walked free. When Esther stepped forward, a nation was saved. When Paul surrendered, the gospel shook the world. The question is not if God is calling you. The question is, will you answer? Because God is not looking for the most talented. He's not looking for the most polished, the most followed, or the most articulate. He's looking for the most surrendered, the ones who say, "Here I am, Lord, send me." Even if it means rejection, even if it means being misunderstood, even if it means walking alone. Because when God calls you, you will be separated, set apart, not for isolation, but for preparation. He'll pull you away from the crowd. He'll silence the noise. He'll strip away every crutch, every idol, every illusion of control. Why? Because God doesn't use the man who is full of himself. He uses the one who is empty enough for his spirit to fill. And let me warn you, when God truly calls you, it will wreck your plans. It will offend your logic. It will stretch your faith until it screams, but it will also awaken something in you that the world could never touch. A fire, a clarity, a holy rage against mediocrity, a longing for something eternal. You'll stop caring about being impressive. You'll start craving to be impactful, because when the hand of God rests on you, popularity becomes irrelevant, comfort becomes a prison, and obedience becomes oxygen. You'll begin to feel what Jesus felt when he said, "My food is to do the will of him who sent me." This is not a job. This is not a hobby. This is your divine assignment, and no one else can walk it for you. Not your pastor, not your friends, not your spouse. When God calls you, the burden falls on you to answer, to rise, to obey. Not next year, not when life feels easier. But now, God does not wait for your life to get convenient. He calls in the middle of the mess. He speaks while you're still unqualified. He taps you on the shoulder while you're still covered in dirt. Because he's not waiting for your perfection. He's looking for your yes. That's all he's ever needed. Moses had a stutter. David had a past. Peter had a temper. Mary had a scandal. Paul had blood on his hands. But what did they all have in common? They said yes. They dropped the net. They left the palace. They walked away from what was safe. And in return, God gave them something eternal. A legacy. A mantle. A story that would outlive them. And the same God who called them is calling you. Right now, he's not calling you to be famous. He's not calling you to be safe. He's calling you to be faithful. He's calling you to speak when others stay silent. To build when everyone else tears down. To stay when others quit. To believe when others bow to fear. And here's what no one tells you. The first step is always the hardest, because it requires you to step away from the life you've built and step into the life God has designed. You won't have all the answers. You won't have the whole map, but you will have the voice that says, "This is the way, walk in it." And when you do, When you finally say yes, you'll begin to feel something shift. Doors open, weights lift, heaven backs you. Because you're not just surviving anymore, you're walking in divine alignment. And there is no drug, no title, no relationship on earth that can compare to the feeling of knowing you are doing exactly what God created you to do. That's the high, that's the rush, that's the fire the enemy can't extinguish. It's not easy, it's not always fun, but it is holy. And once you taste it, once you feel the power of true obedience, nothing else satisfies. You don't need perfect conditions to answer God's calling. You need courage. You need surrender. You need to say, God, I don't know what this will cost me, but if it's from you, I'm in. And that's where the battle begins. The moment after the yes, when the war for your destiny gets real. Because hell does not tremble when you go to church. Hell trembles when you answer the call of God on your life. Expect resistance. Expect whispers from the past. Expect the enemy to remind you of every failure, every fear, every flaw, anything to keep you from stepping fully into who God created you to be. But let me remind you, God did not call you because you were perfect. He called you because He is powerful. You weren't chosen by accident. You were chosen on purpose, for a purpose. So stand your ground. This is where the timid fall away. This is where the crowd turns back, but not you. You didn't come this far to doubt now. You didn't say yes to play it safe. You were called by the King of Glory, not to blend in, but to break through. And breakthrough doesn't come to the passive. It comes to the obedient, to the disciplined, to the ones who wake up every day and say, God, I don't feel worthy, but I'm still showing up. God, I don't see the full picture, but I trust you with the next step. God, I'm scared, but my faith is louder than my fear. This is the real walk, the walk of the chosen, the narrow path that few find, not because it's hidden, but because it's hard. But understand this, everything you're called to will cost you something. You will lose people. You will lose opportunities. You will lose parts of yourself you thought you needed. But what you gain heaven's backing. You gain peace that surpasses understanding. You gain a life that matters, not just in time, but in eternity. So don't be surprised when the pruning starts, when doors close, when friendships shift, when your comfort begins to dry up. It's not punishment. It's positioning. God is removing what cannot go with you into your next season, because the weight of your calling is too great for superficial attachments. This is why Moses had to leave Egypt, why Abraham had to leave his father's house, why Jesus had to leave the crowd. Separation is the price of elevation, and obedience is the vehicle of transformation. God's not asking for your applause. He's not impressed by your resume. He's asking for your obedience, because in your obedience is someone else's breakthrough. When Noah built the ark, even though it had never rained, his obedience saved his family. When Ruth followed Naomi, even though the road was uncertain, her obedience positioned her in the lineage of Jesus. When Jesus walked to the cross, sweating blood, carrying shame that wasn't his obedience became the salvation of the world. So don't ever think your yes is small. Every time you obey, something eternal shifts. Heaven moves, lives are changed, and you begin to see it. Not just in what you do, but in who you become. Your voice carries more weight. Your words carry more power. Not because you're louder, but because your life is backed by something greater, by God Himself. You walk into rooms differently, not with arrogance, but with authority, not with fear, but with fire, because you've been with Him. You've been in the secret place. You've cried the prayers that broke you. You've endured the silence that tested you. You've walked through the seasons that stripped you bare, and still you stayed. You didn't leave. You didn't compromise. You didn't take the easy way out. You answered. And now you're dangerous to the kingdom of darkness, because the enemy knows the man or woman who has nothing left to lose but everything to give to God is unstoppable. That's who you are becoming. The kind of person who doesn't just preach with words, but with their walk. The kind of person who doesn't beg for purpose, but embodies it. The kind of person who has been refined by the fire and still worships through the smoke. Don't stop now. Don't shrink back. Don't get distracted. This world will try to water down your calling. Culture will try to redefine it. Fear will try to silence it. But your calling isn't up for debate. It was spoken by God before time began. And if He said it, He will bring it to pass, as long as you keep saying yes. So rise, not because you feel ready, but because you are called. And God does not call the ready. He readies the called. And if you've ever wondered how to answer God's calling, it starts with one decision, one declaration, one surrender. Not my will, Lord, but yours be done. So what now? You've heard the call, you've felt the pull, you've stood at the edge of what's known, and now you see the horizon of what's possible. This is your moment, not tomorrow, not when you feel more holy, not when the fear disappears. Now, because calling does not wait for the convenient, purpose does not bow to your calendar, and destiny does not ask for your permission. It demands your obedience. You must understand, answering God's call is not a one-time event. It is a daily surrender. It is a lifestyle of faith, forged in fire. It's when you wake up in the middle of the night with a burden you didn't ask for, but you carry it anyway. It's when you speak the truth, knowing it will cost you comfort, but you speak it anyway. It's when you give when you don't feel like you have enough. Love when you don't feel it returned. Forgive when it makes no earthly sense, but you do it anyway. That is answering the call. And that kind of life, it's not for the weak-willed. It's not for the double-minded. It's not for those who want both the world's applause and God's approval. It's for the ones who have burned the boats, the ones who have closed every back door, the ones who have set their face like flint and said, I was not put on this earth to play it safe. I was put here to shake the gates of hell. And listen to me, when you live like that, when you walk in your calling with holy fire, you become dangerous. You walk into battle not to survive, but to conquer. You speak life in places that reek of death. You carry light into dungeons of despair. You become the answer to someone's prayer because you answered his. And all the pain you went through to get here, all the tears, all the heartbreak, all the silence, it wasn't wasted, it was training, because every soldier must be tested before he's trusted. And you've been through the testing. You've been through the wilderness. You've been through the fire. And now you carry the oil. Not everyone will understand it. Some will reject you. Some will call you too intense, too bold, too serious. Let them. They weren't there when God spoke to you. They didn't see what you saw. They didn't feel that sacred moment when heaven pulled your soul forward and said, I made you for this. So walk with fire in your bones. Walk with heaven in your step. Walk with your head high and your knees ready to hit the floor, because you know the power is not your own. It comes from the one who called you, the one who knit you together in your mother's womb, the one who has counted every tear, numbered every hair, and orchestrated every step of your journey, even the painful ones. God wastes nothing. The divorce, he'll use it. The failure, he'll redeem it. The addiction, he'll break it and turn it into your testimony. The silence, he was training your ear to hear his voice above all others. So lift your eyes, straighten your spine. The time for doubt is over. The time for delay is done. God is calling, not just for your talent, not just for your passion. He is calling for your life, not a piece of it, not the Sunday morning version, all of it. And when you give him everything, When you lay it all down and say, God, even if it costs me everything, I'll still say yes. Then he gives you everything that truly matters. Authority, clarity, peace, impact, legacy, and the power of his presence. This is not hype. This is holiness. You are not made to blend in. You are not created to coast. You are not saved to sit still. You are called to rise, to fight, to build, to burn with a fire that will not go out until you take your last breath. And when you stand before God at the end of your life, you won't regret the battles. You won't regret the sleepless nights. You won't regret the pain of obedience. You'll only regret the silence of missed opportunity, the tragedy of almost. So don't almost answer. Don't almost obey. Don't almost become. Rise. Answer with your life. Answer with your time. Answer with your courage. Answer with your obedience. The voice of God is still calling. Will you answer? Thank you for joining me today. Please like and subscribe and comment below. We would love to know if this helped you in any way. May the Spirit of God be with you.